Things were getting out of hand on day 7 of Diddy's federal trial when an unexpected development occurred. The world's most popular podcast host, comedian, and pundit Joe Rogan entered the courtroom. A lone man with a little black notepad and a memory brimming with unsettling facts. No entourage, no attorneys. Joe Rogan was here to testify under oath. And what he disclosed wasn't gossip. It was experience, observation, and a trail of receipts that went far beyond viral headlines. What started as speculative commentary on his podcast had taken a serious turn. As Joe Rogan took the stand to clarify things, it became apparent that this was more than simply a celebrity trial. It was the collapse of a whole system. There was an electrifying excitement as the Diddy trial started. Joe Rogan, comedian, UFC commentator, and host of the most-watched podcast in the world, walked into the courtroom as a surprise witness, shocking everyone. The press gallery was already full, and rumors were flying like wildfire. Joe Rogan didn't show up empty-handed. This was an all-out intervention, not a PR gimmick. Standing tall and composed in his dark gray jacket and slacks, Rogan exuded an air of casual concentration as he took the stand. A sudden silence fell over the room. Despite the prohibition of photography, court sketch artists hurried to record every emotion. Astonished, Diddy's legal team gazed on. Judge requested Rogan to identify himself and tell what he does for a living. John James Rogan, Jr. Joe Rogan himself is the host of the show, he said. He was efficient, starting with, "I'm not here to gossip." He reiterated his purpose. "My guests on my program have given me first-hand tales that have strong connections to the events unfolding in this courtroom, so I've decided to come here. Yes, I have kept the tapes secure. I also have them." Murmurs spread like wildfire over the courtroom. After this, Rogan was handled similarly to a whistleblower. He recounted his years of interviewing people in the business, including former bodyguards, record executives, and insiders. Rather than coming to me as a judge, many of them sought me out as someone who would remain on camera even when the facts became embarrassing because they were too afraid to talk privately. Next, Rogan revealed the first shocking revelation. He spoke about an off-air visitor who had been an A-list artist's bodyguard in 2023. Physical proof, films, recordings, and a secret server housed in a chamber like a bunker inside Diddy's Miami home, he said. Even more disturbing is the fact that this guest said famous people like Jay-Z, LeBron James, and others were aware of the freak-offs. Not that they took part, but that they were aware. Everyone in the courtroom gasped in shock. It was clear that Diddy was distressed. The court rejected the objections of his attorneys. Rogan went on to explain that this specific person has been present at several of these gatherings. Rather than parties, he saw them as rites. Guests were blindfolded and phones were confiscated. The term freak-off was slang in the industry, and no one batted an eye. Rogan was questioned by the prosecution if he had any recordings with him. A nod came from him. "I had already sent snippets to the district attorney's office before I came here." As the judge ordered the recordings to be officially logged, Rogan made a statement that made every juror sit up and take notice. "I've had Navy SEALs on my show. I've had conspiracy theorists, professors, even CIA whistleblowers. And I've never heard anything this disturbing come from the lips of people so high up in entertainment." He glanced at Diddy and finished part of his statement with a quiet fury. "This isn't just celebrity gossip. This is systemic abuse hiding behind platinum records and red carpet smiles." The court allowed Rogan to rehash certain tales from his podcast that he had presented over the previous few years as he became more comfortable with his evidence. He went on to say that he has been seeing a troubling trend since 2018. "A famous R&B band's tour manager was one of my first listeners. While he was on the air, He told me something completely different about the underbelly of the music industry, including drug culture, pay for play, and non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. Rogan stressed that many of these discussions did not make it to the final edit because people were too terrified to attend Diddy's parties. He claimed the parties weren't simply indulgent, they were hazardous. I had a guest who wanted me to change his name, muffle his voice, and film his segment in a secluded cabin. He continued by bringing up a producer who had attended a 2015 event organized by Diddy. Read from notes taken during that off-air interview. I saw people being filmed against their will, and Diddy called it leverage. The judge asked if these claims were verified. Joe told him that what he saw there made him shiver. Cameras hidden in smoke detectors, people slipping things into drinks, A-list celebrities pretending not to notice. Some were anecdotal, but there were too many in a row to disregard, Rogan explained. He went on to describe how, with the use of non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, he negotiated with legal advisors, he maintained a confidential library of these unaired tales, complete with times, places, and statements from numerous sources detailing the same set of actions. I began to draw connections when the names and behaviors in those lawsuits matched what my guests had been whispering for years. I didn't want to be sued into oblivion, but I also didn't want this stuff buried. He then brought up the Jane Doe lawsuits. He said that in 2022, a famous director of music videos came to him in tears. Uncut and unpublished footage from one of Diddy's parties was what he informed me he possessed. He was coerced into recording these events for more than a decade, but he was too afraid to go public. Joe ended by stating, "This isn't a court of opinion anymore. This is a reckoning. I'm here because people who trusted me with the truth deserve to be heard, even if they're too afraid to show their faces." Joe Rogan inhaled deeply before shifting gears to the moment that went viral. Elon Musk's shocking comments on Jennifer Lopez and Diddy on his podcast. It started off casually. We were talking about Hollywood hypocrisy, how certain celebrities speak up about politics but stay dead silent when it's about people they actually know, Joe remarked. Elon then brought up Jennifer Lopez. Juries leaned in. She hung out with Diddy, attended his parties, and knew all about him. So why didn't she warn anyone? Then Rogan waited. The video became viral, with millions of views. What really got under my skin, though, was the haste with which people did not question J-Lo's whereabouts, but rather rushed to her defense. Shine was sentenced to jail for his role in the 1999 nightclub shooting, which he brought up in court. The claimed shooting incident occurred while Jennifer was inside the vehicle. Jennifer continued dating Diddy for 2 more years after she claimed he wasn't responsible. Diddy was free. Shine went to jail. What does it say when someone walks out of a shooting, helps protect the man arrested, and stays with him while someone else takes the fall? Joe asked the jury after letting that settle with them. What happens if you're only perfect for the devil? He said with a terrifying phrase. When the lawsuits began to pile up, none of the celebrities who had posted about Diddy's charity spoke out, Rogan pointed out. When the freak-off tapes were brought up, where was J-Lo? She was unable to be found when Shine revealed the truth about 1999. That's not to say she committed any wrongdoing. What I am saying is that remaining silent when abused amounts to complicity, and far too many individuals associated with Diddy have become experts at vanishing when the spotlight is on them, he said with an acerbic remark. Leaning forward, Joe Rogan resurrected a subject that had plagued him for months, a yarn involving what one of his off-the-record guests referred to as the bunker. In 2022, my show was visited by a former bodyguard who had worked at Diddy's Miami compound, Rogan said. He became nervous, and we decided not to run that part. The bodyguard allegedly told Rogan about a biometrically accessible vault beneath the estate that was fortified and resembled a cellar. Rogan claims that this information stayed with him. Claiming to have found dozens of encrypted hard disks there, the witness made their case. The black box was his term for Diddy's insurance coverage. Not only did Rogan describe hidden camera footage of famous individuals, business people, and politicians, but he also detailed film of freak-off parties, blackmail materials, contracts, and more. Gasps escaped the courtroom as Diddy's defense team clenched their jaws. A nervous jury fumbled for their water glass. During a backup session, the man once strolled in, he informed me. Server racks, each with its own air gap, were present. A man brandishing a firearm ordered me to exit the room without further ado. The security informed the man that the building in question belonged to Diddy. Joe hesitated. Something about the words Diddy's church stayed with me. Clearly, whatever was in that chamber carried some sort of sacredness for someone, and that something had power. Although the actual presence of the vault hadn't been independently established, the court permitted the prosecution to enter Rogan's declaration into evidence, explaining that it was significant to establishing a behavioral pattern because of the confirmation from several podcast guests. 2 other guests, Rogan said, had worked as stylists for bad boy artists, and they had each described a room below with inward-facing surveillance cameras. Some have even claimed that after seeing what seemed to be a covert peephole in the mirror, she was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement in that very room. That, Rogan remarked, was what was terrifying. People from all walks of life and generations recounted these places and their ceremonies in the same precise terms. After then, he said something that no one in the courtroom had ever heard before. An unknown whistleblower contacted my team 3 months ago. Claiming to have worked for a Miami-based data recovery firm, they were tasked with decrypting video footage stored on a compromised server. Some of the footage allegedly included attendees at Diddy's concerts in inappropriate settings. He concluded the interview by addressing Diddy personally and stating, "If you're innocent, let them search the basement, open the vault, release what's in the black box." He then went on to explain that he hadn't aired the part, but he had archived it since. Should the trial move to the federal seizure level, the government could already have that drive. The courtroom had changed by this time. The pattern of manipulation, intimidation, and silence was addressed by Joe Rogan, who was more than simply a famous witness. He was an informant. He pulled out a huge stack of handwritten papers and began to flick through them, explaining, "I want to talk about patterns." He continued, "Because this isn't just about parties. It's about control, fear, image, and silence." Rogan listed previous guests who dropped hints about something but didn't actually reveal it. One was a stylist who styled the hair of famous people. She was supposed to be talking about fashion on the show, but she revealed to me after the fact that she quit the profession because to what Diddy did to her. He changed gears and stated, "I asked her who else was there that night. She went on to say that she witnessed someone being videotaped in a private room through a 2-way mirror at a Hamptons home party." Everyone gasped when she finally shouted the name, Jay-Z. Despite her claims that Jay-Z was present on many occasions, Rogan noted that she never indicated that he engaged in anything. She said he was invisible during those events, yet nevertheless visible to everyone else. He remained silent and unassuming the entire time. It wasn't that Jay-Z did anything wrong. Rather, it was that he turned a blind eye. Jay-Z and Diddy were like 2 sides of the same coin, according to ex-security, dancers, personal assistants, and producers. The settings were consistent regardless of whether one was raucous and disorderly or calm and methodical. The reason nobody called out the conduct was something Rogan brought up when he addressed an insider in the business. His laughter filled the air. The prosecution used Joe's statement, "He told me, 'You don't take down Puff without pulling Have down too,' to bolster their theory of institutional protection, which holds that individuals turn a blind eye in order to preserve their standing, power, and access. If Diddy was the fire, Jay-Z was the smoke detector that never went off. Joe continued, before going on to discuss the anonymous texts his team got advising them to stop talking about Diddy. We tracked down the IP address that sent the message, which said, "Don't dig too deep, Joe. You'll end up like the ones who did." The recipient was a business associated with Roc Nation's Public Relations Department. A letter of caution was attached to the judge's approval of the statement. Silence is a weapon, and this entire machine is built on people keeping their mouths shut, Rogan remarked, his eyes fixed on the jurors. But that's just not how I'm made. Joe changed his tone when he mentioned the last group of people. Those, he said, were in the wrong place at the wrong moment. The one where a guy said he was led around Diddy's party wearing a mask fashioned from human anatomy. "You all remember the Manzero lawsuit," he started. "You heard it right. Someone I chatted with on that boat was there." He gave the account of a young man in his early 20s who had been engaged to record an occurrence in the year 2023. Joe proceeded to read from an anonymized transcript. There were celebrities everywhere: LeBron James, Gloria Estefan, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, people smiling, but the further back you went, the darker it got. Joe stated that he was instructed to just film the good stuff, but what he witnessed left him with lasting emotional scars. The courtroom fell into a hushed stillness as images of red-lit chambers, imprisoned individuals, and a guy wearing a mask were shown around. Additionally, Joe mentioned that the individual asserted that he relinquished his memory cards once the night ended. Diddy's crew stole the film and handed him $5,000. They promised to send him the final version later, but they never got back to him. This testimony's strength lay in the fact that it was directly related to an actual legal suit. "You believe this is complete anarchy?" Rogan asked, drawing a connection. His final statement was chilling. "If even one of those tapes gets played in court, half this industry is finished." He looked down, closed his notebook, and said, "I'm not afraid of getting sued. I'm afraid of what happens if we keep pretending this doesn't exist." After describing the system, he continued, "The scariest part is the people we idolize are in the rooms where it happens." Once again, Joe Rogan changed the subject, this time to the notorious 2023 boat party that had been mentioned in court documents but had never been publicly documented until now, the subject of celebrity collusion. "People think it's a myth," Rogan said, "but it's real. I have testimony from 2 different people who were on that boat, 1 crew member and 1 guest." The courtroom was silent. Diddy's lawyers began to mumble anxiously. Joe carefully unfurled a letter that had been redacted to protect the name of a former boat staffer. What they believed to be a private music video shoot turned out to be just a job. They were informed that the travelers were high-profile personalities and that they were strictly forbidden from using their phones at any time. Before they could board, security patted them down. After a moment, he stopped. The crew dubbed it the rotation. New visitors brought in every hour, escorted by security, and the mood shifted as the boat entered international waters. They also shut a private area and pulled the blinds. Joe's tone abruptly became icy. According to the eyewitness, covert cameras were installed within the mirror frames. Although some employees defied orders to poison beverages, others followed suit. Quietness fell upon the gallery. The visitor who stepped up was an unannounced addition, a favor to an industry insider. His presence was not originally planned. He had anticipated networking, but it was really quite different. There was a man in a mask. People were laughing at him, Joe cited the visitor as saying. The only difference was that it wasn't performance art. Telephones were held aloft. Famous individuals were among those who watched. Rogan mentioned that Gloria Estefan was one of the names that came up in several testimonials. Her name came up just like LeBron's, Beyoncé's, Jay-Z's, but no one's saying she participated in anything, he explained. The image it presents is unsettling. After the yacht docked, he was offered money to forget what he saw, Joe revealed, the most notable information to far. His refusal was clear. The person broke into his flat 2 weeks later, taking just his external hard drives. The court ordered this statement to be submitted as evidence. Rogan cast his gaze upon the jury and said, "Some were paid to forget it, while others risked their lives to speak the truth." Joe Rogan's evidence had already changed the tone of the whole trial at this point. Systemic intimidation, dominance, and blackmail have replaced celebrity antics as the central issues. "Allow me to discuss leverage," he stated frankly, because Diddy's creation wasn't merely a party scene, it was an ecosystem of silence. He informed the court that off-air, in whispers and tearful moments, numerous podcast guests recounted the identical scenario. You're invited to a party, you're asked to sign an NDA, you're secretly recorded, and then, a month later, you receive a text message. "How was last month?" What Joe referred to as a web of invisible handcuffs was best left unsaid. His story began with a Grammy-winning producer offering him a huge boost to his career if he would only remove a video from a Diddy party. 3 venues canceled his tour after a week because he declined. Also mentioned by Rogan were the legal letters he had received from public relations companies instructing him to refrain from mentioning specific persons. Though he refrained from naming them, the jury was not in need of a route guide. The most terrifying aspect occurred when one of my guests revealed that there was a master folder, the genuine deal, having worked for a celebrity security service. Joe mentioned that Diddy referred to it as the rainy day file. As a kind of insurance, this folder held encrypted backup footage kept off-site. Theoretically, he would reveal his secrets if his enemies attempted to bring him down. He inhaled deeply. According to my informant, a prominent politician was highlighted in one of the files. "The name's not mine to say," he said, "but if the feds have those tapes, this trial is just the beginning." The judge cut out that remark, but it had already caused harm. With the words, "This wasn't fame, this was fear." Joe ended the program. Standing from his witness chair, Joe Rogan testified that he had done more than simply throw parties. He had constructed a vault of quiet, and that if one key were to turn, everything would come tumbling out. Even though it wasn't requested, he had to finish standing. "Canceling Diddy isn't the point," he stated. In his closing speech, he said, "It's about finally holding someone accountable who built an empire on fear." The court gave him permission to do so. Even the courtroom sketch artist had ceased his work, so there was complete silence. As Rogan went on to say, "Throughout the years, I've interviewed astronauts, scientists, philosophers, comedians, and ex-spooks. It becomes second nature to recognize when someone is being dishonest or when someone is being coy out of fear. The rumors I've heard about Diddy aren't from anonymous internet users. Rather, they originated from those who trembled while they spoke and glanced over their shoulder every 10 seconds. He paused to explain. "The public will discover the film if the federal government does not. Look at Diddy. Someone, somewhere, has it. This courtroom will be embarrassed when it comes out. I have no idea if you inherited this or if you began it. I know you kept it running, but now you're seeing it fall apart from the inside out." The judge then asked Rogan if he had anything further to say. Gently, he gave a nod. "Every word had to count this time, but I've spoken a lot on the mic before. Some of it humorous and some of it stupid." He stood down because, if he could prevent even one child from entering that type of nightmare, then violating every threat, non-disclosure agreement, and quiet producer would have been worth it. As Rogan passed the defendant's table, the jury remained silent. Diddy, for the first time in days, did not avert his gaze.